Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear,
business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.
Welcome. I'm Jay Shear with Jay Shear Business Consulting. We build solid foundations for service-based businesses to grow and scale and achieve the results and success they deserve. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. You've likely heard the quote, "Nice guys finish last." It's been written about, sung about, and talked about. But can nice guys and gals finish first? Can kindness and success coexist? What does it take to create a likable business? Well, on today's episode, we're going to explore these questions and more. Our guest is a husband and father of three, a serial entrepreneur, New York Times bestselling author of 4 books so far, global keynote speaker, one of the most read contributors to Inc.com, a wildly popular writer in LinkedIn's influencer program, and he's been featured by CNBC, BBC, ABC, World News Tonight, The Today Show, and many more. As if he didn't already have a full plate, he's also the president of the New York chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization. Please welcome the man who in 2006, along with his then fiance, Carrie, showed the world how to create a sponsored wedding in a 7,500 seat baseball stadium, Dave Kerpen. Dave, thank you so much for being here. It is fantastic to see you.
Thank you for having me, Jay. You know, I knew you were a pro when you reached out, and that intro was phenomenal and much, much appreciated, sir.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here. So let's dive right in. There are so many different areas that we could go. So I want to stay very focused on some key things that I think are going to be very relevant and very timely for our audience. One of the things, though, that I think would be very interesting for all of us would be for you to share. Let's kind of turn the clock back a little bit. I would love for you to share a bit about your backstory, what influences you had growing up that you can look back on that impact the work that you do today.
Whoa, well, okay. So I would say growing up, my parents unfortunately had a bit more of a negative influence on me than positive, in as much as, you know, my dad has bipolar disorder, and he was first, well, I was taught at a very, very young age to achieve. And, you know, I remember my firmest memory as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old maybe, was coming back with a 99 on a math test, and my dad saying, "Why didn't you get 100?" And I remember thinking, "Oh man, this is tough." So I got 100 on the next math test, and my dad said, "Was there any extra credit?" And I didn't. There was, and I hadn't gotten it. And so I learned at a very, very young age to push, and to never be happy with what I had, to always want more, which had a very, very profound impact on me, mostly in good ways because I'm always so darn driven. But of course, in terms of my own happiness, it made it challenging. Helped me with some therapy bills along the way. And then I mentioned my dad's bipolar disorder. You know, he was first manic and hospitalized, psychotic, when I was 12. And so I learned at a very, very young age to be independent, to take care of my younger brothers, to become a leader. And, you know, again, there are some downsides to that in terms of losing my proverbial childhood. But to the extent that that experience really shaped me, I think it was really important. And I did sort of gravitate towards leadership and independence and just taking matters into my own hands the way entrepreneurs do when I see challenges.
So when you were in college, did you take on leadership roles in various clubs and organizations and the like?
Totally. So first and foremost, I went to a public exam school, a really really good high school in New York, and then many of whose students go to Ivy Leagues, but we couldn't afford an Ivy League school, so I didn't even apply. I did fortunately get a full merit scholarship to Boston University, and that paid for my tuition, but I still had to pay for my for room and board. So I worked all throughout college, and I had the job that I had that sort of was my first real public sort of marketing type job was as a ballpark vendor at Fenway Park in the Boston Garden, and I developed a whole shtick there. But yeah, I also did. I was a resident assistant and a orientation leader and student government president and whatnot, all that type of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think I naturally do gravitate towards leadership roles and opportunities.
Yeah, it's pretty clear when you look over your professional career and you see all the different things that you've done, the various companies that you've led, and the type of work that you do, leadership driven, motivated, those sorts of things tend to stand out. So that's a thread that seems to weave throughout everything that you've done. I want to touch on something that you just mentioned, and that's going back to when you worked at Fenway. And I want to talk about creativity for a moment, because that, and I've heard you tell this story before, but talk about being creative at an early age and then to take that creativity to a whole nother level with you and your then fiance, with what you did with your wedding. And we don't have to go into every detail, but really what I want to focus on is the creativity aspect and how your mind processes opportunity. I think that is incredibly interesting. So share a little bit of that Fenway story to give us some context around creativity.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And it's funny, I don't normally think about it in the context of creativity. And I don't think I am intentionally being humble, really, when I say that I don't think I'm very creative. I think that necessity is the mother of invention. And I don't think I'm creative. I do think I'm resourceful. And I think I have some courage, but I don't know how creative I am. But anyway, on my first day on the job, I sold a product called Crunch and Munch. It was the worst selling product in the building. And I realized I had to do things a little different if I wanted to sell more. You're only paid on commission in the ballpark vending business. So I got paid like $10 my first night. And I had to make more money than that. It was fun to be at the ballpark, but I really had to make more money than that. So I got creative and did anything that I could do to get people's attention, which involves some singing and some dancing and some juggling boxes. And I had absolutely no talent doing any of those things. I am the first to admit, truly talentless, but I had enough, I guess, chutzpah or courage or whatever you want to call it to be okay looking foolish and be okay with some people laughing at me, which they certainly did. And I got a lot of attention, and I was written up in some local newspapers, and one thing led to another, and I ended up like being featured on ESPN Sports Center, and I developed a whole thing as the Crunch and Munch guy that ultimately helped me sell quite a bit of Crunch and Munch. And I went from $10 that first night to over $1,000 a night in my prime, which was really good for a college student, hawking product at baseball games. And then, yeah, to the second part of your question, if you fast forward to my wedding, again, necessity is the mother of invention. We wanted a huge wedding because I'm kind of like this larger than life type personality. I do like to do things big. And we couldn't afford it. Still, I was a teacher at the time. My wife was in sales management, but we could not afford the kind of wedding that we wanted. And so my wife had this idea to get married at a baseball stadium and create a sponsored wedding promotion at the game before the wedding. And we pitched it to the general manager of the Brooklyn Cyclones. He said, and I quote, "This is the craziest idea I've ever heard. but somehow I think it might work. Again, I don't know that we were necessarily being creative, but I think we were being entrepreneurial, resourceful, etc. And we were good at selling it. And so he gave us the inventory, and then we resold the sponsorship inventory from the baseball game to our wedding vendors. 1-800-Flowers.com sponsored our flowers. Smirnoff sponsored our alcohol. Entenmann sponsored our desserts. David's Bridal sponsored our bridesmaids' gowns and wedding dress. All in, we raised $100,000 for an amazing wedding, $20,000 for charity. And I got married to the love of my life, but it turned out to be a very successful marketing event as well. Of course, I got married on July 8th, the same day that you and your beautiful bride, Audrey, got married, Jay. And
yes.
So that was the beginning of my, officially the beginning of my entrepreneurial career.
I love that. There's so many different lessons that come out of those experiences that you just described, that when I think about that entrepreneurial journey, when I think about the business individuals that are listening right now or watching right now, that are always looking for opportunity, right? That when they see an obstacle that's in front of them, whether it's not being able to sell enough Crunch and Munch or not having enough money to have the kind of wedding that I really want to be able to meet that goal, my eyes are open for a solution versus focusing only on the problem and allowing that to stop me in my tracks, right? So I'm sure mindset plays a lot in that equation, but I think it's so interesting the way that you and Carrie were able to figure out how we're going to move forward on this and create such an incredible impetus for a successful business career and venture.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see entrepreneurship as creative problem solving. So there's that creativity again. But yeah, I think that what entrepreneurs do at their core is see a problem and find a solution for that problem. And sometimes in terms of small businesses, it's a very localized problem. And sometimes in terms of global businesses, it's a very global problem. But at its essence, entrepreneurship is problem solving.
Absolutely. So I'd love to talk for a moment about building a business with a spouse, a best friend, a family member, et cetera. And obviously, in your case, it was your best friend and spouse, right? An amazing combination. And talk for a moment for those business owners and entrepreneurs who are moving forward, growing their business, and they happen to have their spouse or best friend as a partner. What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way? Kind of the pros, and then also what are some of the challenges that you experienced? And we're going to talk about the sale of your business here in a moment. But before we do that, I want to talk about the growth stage and what you experienced working with and growing with your wife.
Yeah, totally. So let me focus on the pros first, because I think at the end of the day, no matter how many challenges there are, and there are certainly challenges that I will speak of, the pros outweigh the cons by far. Because when you're in business, being an entrepreneur is very lonely. Being a CEO is very lonely. Everyone works for you. It's a lonely gig at the top. And so as I coach and mentor quite a few entrepreneurs, I always tell them finding a partner in your business is really valuable if you can find a partner. And so often folks look for a partner with a skill set. And to them, I say that much more important than finding a partner with a specific skill set is finding a partner that you can inherently trust. So for me, the number one pro by a landslide of working with Carrie, of working with my wife, of working with my best friend is having somebody that I so implicitly trust with something so important. And I've been fortunate enough to start businesses with a number of other people who aren't my wife and best friend. But what I always look for is that core trust, that absolutely fundamental trust, which is to me, there's nothing better. Okay, that said, some of the challenges really lie around boundary setting and communications, and these are things that are challenges with any partner. And in any relationship really of any kind. But I think the most important time for boundaries and communication is when you happen to be married to your business partner. Early on, we took problems from work home. We took problems from home to work. We fought. We argued. We stepped over the line with respect to each other's zones, and we learned, often the hard way, those early years, Jay, to be very specific with boundary setting, with roles, with defining who was responsible for what, and making sure that we didn't get into each other's lanes, to empower each other, and then to get out of each other's way. That's so important, again, in all things business, but certainly when you are married to your partner. Communication, there's literally no such thing as over communication. And so the lesson learned was, communicate more, communicate better, communicate in different ways, make sure we are super clear with each other. No matter how well I know my wife, I am not a mind reader and she is not a mind reader. And we have to communicate these things. This is like, I think people always think because they know their husbands and wives so well that they know what they're thinking. Well, it's just simply not the case. The way to know is to ask and to confirm and to verify and confirm again. And so these two big issues around boundary setting, defining roles, and communicating, I think those are the most important lessons that we learned along the way.
Powerful and great advice for all of those that are in a similar situation right now. And it's so incredibly important to define those boundaries and over communicate, like you just said. That's so powerful. If we can do that, we can move past so many of the challenges and issues that we face in both business as well as in our personal lives. So I want to talk about the growing the business that you grew. You invested, you, Carrie, and your team, 14 years growing a very successful business that you just recently sold. And the name of that business, share with us the name of the business that you guys created. What was the genesis of that name? Where did it come from?
Sure. Well, the original name for the company, actually, that we started. So, I left off the wedding story with this very successful wedding, raising all this money. And afterwards, our vendors said this was awesome. They got so much press. We were featured all over the world in press at that wedding. He said, "This is awesome. What are you guys going to do next?" And we couldn't get married again. So we decided, heck, let's start a company. Let's start a marketing company here. We're sitting in our tiny 1-bedroom apartment and we're like, okay, we're going to help create a buzz. And we're called the Kerpens. And so created a company. It was originally called the K-Buzz. And we were originally doing guerrilla marketing, word of mouth marketing, event marketing. And about 7 months into the business, Facebook opened up beyond college students to all people that could join the Facebook platform. And I was one of the first non-college students on Facebook. And I was immediately like, wow, this is amazing. This is way better than baseball stadiums and mall events right here for marketing. This is going to be very big. And so we pivoted to focus on social media marketing, digital word of mouth marketing early on. I ran for office in New York and I ended up dropping out of the race. And the woman who was the incumbent that I was running against called me up and said, "Dave, I want to thank you for dropping out of the race, and I hope to hear you one day soon." And I said, "What do you mean hear me?" And she said, "Don't you work for that radio station, the K-Buzz?" And I said, "Ooh, Kara, we got to change the name of this company. This is not good. This is not on brand for what it is that we're trying to do now that we're focused on social media, especially." We had an employee. We were about 10 people at that point. We had an employee who suggested Likeable. And I immediately loved the name. I reached out to my friends at Facebook because they were about to launch the like button. This was a couple months before they launched the like button. And I said, "Hey, what do you think of this name for, as we're focused on social media now." And my friend AJ said, "I really love it, but the only thing I'll warn you is, how Facebook changes things so often around here, especially early on, mind you. They were changing things quite often. He said, but I feel pretty good about it. So we bought Likeable.com for $3,000. And we launched, we did a name change just before Facebook launched the like button. And yeah, it really, it stuck, and it's been a very, very powerful part of my personal brand and writing and books and et cetera ever since. So I'm very, very fortunate that our employee Jenna at the time thought of Likeable, and that things worked out the way they did.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what a gift it was, and what an incredible journey that it's been over those 14 years that leads us to where we are today. So you just recently sold the business to 10 Pearls, and congratulations on that. Built this business to an 8-figure social media agency. And now my understanding is Carrie is staying on board. She's continuing to run that business. Is that correct?
Yeah, you Jay, you really do so much better research than most podcast folks. I really appreciate that. So yeah, so we sold the business in January, and Carrie will do an earnout. I had already stepped away from the day-to-day responsibilities of the business several years ago, actually, and Carrie had been the CEO for the last several years, and so she'll do the a 3-year earnout as CMO of 10 Pearls and CEO of the Likeable division of 10 Pearls now. But I'm free and clear. I'm just a husband to the CEO now. So which it's a nice, strange but really nice feeling as well.
The new moniker. I love it. So with all that said, I would love it if you would share with our audience some of the lessons that you learned, both of you, that you learned through that process of exiting your business, selling your business. Had you, when you first established the company itself, had you set very specific goals for yourself in terms of long-range planning, exit strategy, et cetera? And then also the due diligence aspect and all of that. What did you learn through that?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, when we first started the business, it was 2 things. First, it was opportunistic, truly, after the wedding, and sort of having these folks that thought that we knew a thing or two about marketing and wanted to hire us. But second, more important, we had a young child, and we wanted to have more time with her, and wanted the freedom that comes with starting a business. So our original goal in starting then the K-Buzz, which became Likeable, was more time, freedom with our child, and soon to be multiple children. But as the business grew, we shifted goals, and we read a book. I read a book called Built to Sell by John Warlow a couple years in, and I thought it was just a phenomenal book. And we realized whether we were going to sell our business or not, it made sense to build our company as if we could one day sell the company. And so we started focusing more on recurring revenue and building systems and predictable revenue and productization of what it was we were selling. And I know you work with a lot of professional services businesses. I can tell you can productize anything if you think less about what it is that you do and more about what the results you create are for your end client or customer. So we did that work, and then every single year we got together. We do a annual strategic planning, of course, with our management teams, but we also do an annual retreat with just the 2 of us. And so, of course, every year we would say, "Hey, is this the time, or should we put it off?" And a couple of years ago, we said, "Yeah, what's the time?" And in 2019, we said, "Look, let's really get the books ready. Let's prepare, and then a year from now we'll readdress. And if we are in fact ready to go, we will sell." And so that was December 19. We had that meeting. Then we had a little curveball with the pandemic, but frankly, the business did very well throughout the pandemic. So when we got back together in December of 2020, we said, "Yep, we're ready to do it. Let's go." And we hired a business broker and generated 3 offers and generated 2 letters of intent. And the whole process remarkably took less than 90 days from start to finish. in terms of lessons learned from the process, what I will say is that if entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, selling a business is a roller coaster with even bigger highs and lows and loop-de-loops, and it's a roller coaster of roller coasters. It was a really, really stressful several weeks of due diligence. It was really, really stressful, and so those lessons that I talked about earlier around boundaries, around communication, those became even more important, even more magnified during the sale process, and just reminding ourselves that we love each other and are committed to each other, and even with the challenges and even the disagreements, and there were some, to remember the priorities and to remember the importance of our relationship. And at the end of the day, that was what reigned, and we were able to come up with a deal that everyone was very, very happy with. The other lesson I'll just quickly mention is the importance, again, of others, and our attorney, our accountant, our broker were just absolutely invaluable. I mean, just so much value that they provided. And, yes, these types of individuals, these types of professionals cost money, but I wouldn't change anything for the world. I mean, it was so important and valuable to have these professionals on our team helping us optimize the value, helping us get smoothly through the process. So super grateful for that.
I'm so glad that you brought up the others, right? The team that's helping you throughout that process, because I know that we have a number of business brokers that listen, that engage with us on Business Minds Coffee Chat. And for any business owner that is contemplating exiting their business, would you share maybe a 2 or 3 tips when it comes to selecting a business broker based on your experience and what you went through? What would you recommend to others? What should they look for? What should they pay attention to as they're investigating who they should work with?
Yeah, I would say so. Let me think. I think of 2 important things off the top of my head. The first thing is talking to references. I think it's such an important thing. And so, I mean, like I would make references to our company as like a 3rd child back then, or now a 4th child, right? It's like, and so you want it to be handled with someone that you can trust. And so no matter how good the broker is in terms of their pitch, I found it more valuable to talk to references. And so we talked to a couple of folks who had sold their business using our broker, and that was like really reassuring and wonderful and valuable. And then the second thing I would say is to really look at there's so many different kind of business models with business brokers. And what we wanted was somebody who would have a lot of skin in the game around the cash up front. In agency deals, there is often a very small percentage of cash up front. And so we wanted our incentives aligned with our business brokers so that we would maximize the amount of cash up front in the deal. And I think, again, different industries are going to have different, obviously, valuation models and different exits for what they kind of look like compensation wise. But for us, it was really important to align our incentives with our brokers.
Makes perfect sense. And thank you for sharing that. I think that's going to be very helpful to many out there that are going through maybe a similar experience and not quite sure where to turn or how to take that next step. So I appreciate that. And, since we're still in the midst of the pandemic, and we keep looking for those bright lines and hope that things are going to continue to improve and get better. And you mentioned that your business continued to grow, which is great. That's fantastic. Not every business experienced that, but clearly through the pandemic, you have experienced a lot of change. And one of the experiences that you had was that you lost your mother last year. Out of that, you created a business. Speak to that share with us what that business is, why it's so important to you, and how you are impacting lives today?
Sure. Yeah. So last March of 2020, I lost my mom right at the beginning of the pandemic. And it was crazy because my daughter was supposed to be bat mitzvahed on March 14th. And on March 11th, we sent out an email saying the bat mitzvah is on. And then on March 12th, we sent out an email saying the bat mitzvah is off. And then a few days later, I think she was waiting to be around for my daughter's bar mitzvah, because just a few days after that, she passed away. And when we lose a parent, I think it's devastating, obviously, for all of us. I had lost my wife's dad already, so I'd been through that several years prior. But losing a parent during the pandemic, when family is so spread out and when we couldn't see each other and hug each other, it was really challenging. And we talked earlier about entrepreneurship being a problem, seeing a problem and finding a solution, right? So our problem then was celebrating and remembering my mom, despite not being able to be physically present together. So we created a virtual memorial service. Actually, my apprentice at the time, which is another business, helped me create a virtual memorial service and a tribute website for my mom, and it went spectacularly well. Frankly, we had hundreds of people attend, and online, obviously, and it went so well. And then a couple of days after the service for my mom, I was like, oh my God, so many other people are going to have the same exact problem. How can we solve it? And we launched a virtual memorial service business. And I've joked that I think if I write a book about this experience, the first line of the book will be, when I grow up, I want to be an online funeral director, which of course has never been said by literally anyone in humanity. And I never thought in a million years I'd be in the funeral business, and much less the online funeral business. But it was remarkable sort of timing, and the business will do over $1 million in revenue in its first year. Has worked with hundreds of families, and has been really valuable to me in the grieving process. I mean, that's the crazy thing. I didn't realize just how powerful, from a grief perspective, it would be to help others grieve and to help others get through the grief process. And so yeah, it's been an interesting journey. It's a kind of a sad thing to do, but at the same time, it's also a very rewarding thing to be able to serve so many families during their sort of most vulnerable time in need.
Yeah, what a beautiful thing to be able to bring to the market and to be able to offer families and those that are grieving and can't do this in person. To your point, you went through this yourself with having family members in different areas. I've experienced that as well. And you created a solution that allowed everyone to come together and be able to celebrate a loved one's life. And that's quite amazing. So I wish you continued success on that. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So I want to talk very briefly. We could talk about this on a separate podcast, but the writing process for you. Okay, you've had 4 books out so far, and I certainly believe that there is more inside you if you want to pull them out. But what is the writing process like for you? Do you enjoy writing books? Because you're also a prolific writer when it comes to columns and blogs and all kinds of wonderful content that's available. But what about writing books? What's that like for you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, being a marketer first, I will say that my 5th book is coming out in November. It's my first foray into fiction and children's. It's a middle grade book called Normal that chronicles 4 kids growing up in New York, including one who is loosely based on me. But I'm very excited about that dive into something brand new. I have a love-hate relationship with writing, mostly hate. Here's what I love. I love publishing books. I love promoting books. I love sharing books. I love the feedback that comes from people that read my books. I mean, it's like fuel for me, to be quite transparent, if slightly narcissistic about that. But writing itself is really, really hard, and it involves massive focus and massive removal of distractions, which are just absolutely everywhere in today's world, and massive commitment, right? So I've been, you would think, having done this now 5 times, I would have been able to like tell you this process always works and it's smooth and it's easy. It's not. It's not. And I go through periods where I am not feeling that spark, and where no matter what I do, no matter what I try, it is a constant struggle to write. The only thing I can say for anyone that is watching or listening that really wants to be able to write a book is the best way to write is to write and just to sit down. I would commit to 5 minutes a day. In this way, by giving it as small a chunk as possible, it was very hard to fail. Like if I sat for 5 minutes without checking my phone, without checking my email, and I wrote 2 words, I could literally call that a success, which was nice. And success begets more success, because there would be some days where I would actually write more than 2 words. And some days where after 5 minutes, I'd be like, I got to keep going. And 5 minutes would become 10, would become 20. So what I would do is I would schedule 5 minutes, but I would schedule nothing after, for at least half an hour or so, sometimes even an hour. The mind plays funny jokes because, it's like you want to trick yourself, but if it's super obvious that you're tricking yourself, then you're not, it's not working. But anyway, sometimes as much as an hour a day, and it's just, it's repetition and commitment and focus, and we're being relentless about that, even on those days where, the inspiration is lacking or is a struggle. And then at the end of the day, I have these products that I can hopefully be relatively proud of, and that help a lot of people. One of the things I love about writing books and writing articles, Jay, is if I think about scale, the reality is there are very, very few Mark Zuckerbergs and Elon Musks. It's very, very hard to build a business at the scale where one is impacting millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions or billions of people. It's just, there's only a handful of people that are going to be able to do it at that certain level. But by writing books and articles, we can truly impact more people. And so for me, I think of writing books as how I can impact the world and create some scale without necessarily having to build businesses at the same scale.
Makes sense. And I love the advice about spending 5 minutes a day, right? Chunking your time, starting small, building incrementally. And then we find that momentum starts to build over time. I think that's fantastic. So on your writing, who critiques more, you of your work, you or your wife?
Great question. I think early on it would maybe be my wife, and she quickly realized that that was not an avenue for success. And so since that first time she gave me feedback, it's pretty much all positive feedback, because she knows that the negative feedback just won't be received well, and she can leave that to my editors. So I would say that I am much, much more critical than she now. And God bless her. I mean, she's really just the best, which hopefully you've already realized if you're watching or listening. But I'm so, I mean, I could literally pinch myself every day for how lucky I am. But yeah, I actually don't think she critiques my writing at all. And I whenever I look back at any of my writing, I'm fortunately or unfortunately, to go back to the 99 to try to make it 100, I'm able to critique it. I'm able to see how I could have made it better, how I could make it better in the next edition if I'm doing a second or third edition or fourth edition of my books, etc. And then I leave it to the professionals, the editors, to critique me really hard as well.
Understood. So I mentioned at the beginning that Nice guys finish last. It's a common phrase that we've heard so often. And you have demonstrated, and you've demonstrated in this conversation and throughout the work that you put out, that nice guys actually can finish first. Nice guys and gals. And I think that's an important point to make, because it's too easy to buy into a storyline and sometimes not do the things that we should be doing because we're trying to create a certain persona, let's say. And I would love it, in our couple of moments that we have remaining, if you could share with our audience some ideas on how to create a likable business. What are some things that they can do, some things that they can begin to incorporate immediately, or at least start to think about?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for your kind words, and I'm sure that you could find people that would disagree with your assessment of me, but I appreciate your kind words. I will riff for a moment on my second book, Likeable Business, that very, very few people have read. It is my best reviewed book, but my worst selling book, because in fact, it is a horrible cover, and everyone, as I learned the hard way, does in fact judge a book by its cover. And so I've sold very few books, but the content's actually pretty good, at least objectively, according to the reviewers. And what I write about in Likeable Business, I interviewed a couple hundred CEOs looking for common threads on likability and traits that they had that made them successful. So I'll share a little bit of what I found in interviewing all of those CEOs. The number one most important trait that I found was ability to listen. We all think we're good listeners, but very few of us actually are. Most people listen to reply instead of listening to understand. True listening is not listening when we're trying to think of what we're going to say next. It's listening within 100% of our focus on understanding the other person. And I think great, likable leaders are able to listen to their employees, to their customers, to their prospects, to the media, to investors, to the other person at the other end of the conversation. There are a number of other things: authenticity, transparency, responsiveness, passion, team playing, simplicity, adaptability. But the last trait, and the other one that I will focus on, is gratitude. And what I found from so many amazing leaders that I talked to was the ability to be grateful, to step out of oneself and to have gratitude for others. Sheldon Yellen, the CEO of Belfour, writes handwritten thank you notes to people on his employees on their birthday, which doesn't sound that impressive until I tell you that he has over 14,000 employees. So he's writing like literally dozens of cards every single day. Carrie Chesick, former CEO of Restaurant.com, begins every day with a gratitude list. Srikumar Rao, the professor at Columbia, who teaches the most popular course in Columbia on happiness, has all these different gratitude practices. And so when we are grateful, we cannot really be angry or upset, distracted, self-indulgent. We can't have any of those emotions. When we're grateful, we're focused on others and on true servant leadership. And that is what makes the difference. That is what makes a truly likable, a remarkable leader.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And for those that are watching and listening right now, or will be later, check that book out. Even if you don't like the cover, read it anyway, and then apply the lessons learned. That's where change occurs. So, Dave, again, we could go in so many different directions. We're going to have to schedule part 2 of this, because I would like to deep dive in a couple other areas with you. But until then, what overarching message would you like to leave our audience with?
I would say we all have something to teach and something to learn. So it would be nice if everyone were to embrace that a little bit more, to embrace the humility that comes with knowing that we have something to learn, and to embrace the opportunity that comes with knowing that we have something to teach and something to give.
Beautiful. And before we wrap up, please share with us where we can connect with you, where we can consume your content, and obviously buy your books.
Well, thank you. Responsiveness is one of my personal core values, so folks can connect with me on any social network. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm the only Dave Kerpen out there. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse. And actually, I'm doing an in-person summit in New York City at the end of July. So I'm excited about that as well. And my books are available on Amazon and in bookstores everywhere, except Likeable Business. I'm telling you, it might not even be in print anymore. They stopped making copies. Nobody was buying it, but maybe there's 1 or 2 copies that you can still get. But thank you again for having me on, Jay. What a pro you are, and I appreciate very much you having me on. And actually, I do office hours. So anyone on the planet that wants to meet with me can go to scheduledave.com. I meet with literally anyone that wants to chat. I coach and mentor, and never charge anything. It's always pro bono, so there's never any weirdness about that. There is a long delay. It's like, I think November or December right now to book. But if you mark it into your calendar, it will be in mine, and I will be there for you. So feel free, anyone that's listening, to go to scheduledave.com as well and chat with me.
Outstanding. No excuses not to connect with Dave, and we'll make sure to put the links in the show notes. Dave, I'm grateful for you. Thank you so much. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. And please do us a favor, subscribe, rate, and review, and leave us a comment. Let us know 1 or 2 key takeaways that really resonated with you, and we'll make sure to share that with Dave as well. And to enjoy more episodes and to learn how Jay Shear Business Consulting can help build a solid foundation for your business, all you have to do is visit jayshearbusinessconsulting.com. And until next time, keep learning and growing. Visit Dave's website and check him out. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear. Jay Shear.
Business consultant.
Jay Shear.
Jay Shear Business Consulting.